So my main character is Peter Richards, and obviously in the short story we kind of meet him partway through his life to experience this plot. But in the movie, I have to develop the character a little bit more, and I wanted to explore why he believes he is an atheist, or why he believes that he doesn't believe in God. You know, what's happened to him? What's the trauma? What's the conflict that caused that? So I thought it would be good to open the movie with a scene from the 80s, and it's Peter as an 8-year-old, and we meet his parents, and we find out that he has a sister, a teenage sister, and I guess the conflict to Peter's faith and his family's faith is a pretty grim situation where his teenage sister commits suicide. She's bullied at school and can't cope and takes her own life, and this has a huge impact on Peter as an 8-year-old kid, and there's guilt element there. I explore in the story later on when he's talking to John Clement, the vicar, that he's always had this guilt that his sister's bullying dominated his sort of childhood and took up his parents' time all the time, and he felt a little bit sort of in the shadows, and he's always carried this guilt. But for the family, they come up against the fact that the Catholic Church won't allow his sister to be buried in their family plot because she took her own life. And one of the conversations that I've expanded a lot in the script between John and Peter is this debate over mortal sin, and whether or not the church still believes that a suicide victim goes to hell. That's sort of one of the subplots that Peter has to rationalise and discuss with various characters and come up with. So Peter, he's carried this guilt his whole life. His family sort of turned away from their religion because of this situation with their daughter, and so he's kind of inherited this not atheism, but not supporting the church. They stopped going to church on Sundays. They kind of moved away from faith. As I said in an earlier video, I don't think he understands or knows if he really is an atheist, which is they do not believe in heaven and hell or God at all because of science, and evolution, and the church is blind or passionate belief that God created evolution and God created the dinosaurs, whatever. But that's a whole other debate, and Ricky Gervais is a lot better at arguing those points. In terms of my character, he actually says in one of his dialogues that I'm not actually sure if I'm an atheist. I think I'm just lazy when it comes to my faith, and if people ask me, it's just easier to say I'm an atheist. But something happened that's stopped me from going to church, so I don't go to church, and I don't think about God and religion and faith. But maybe because of what happened as a child, I've sort of shied away from it. And of course, this situation in Redway Lane and finding the history of the stones and sort of getting involved in this task that he set himself, he's forced to look at his own faith, and that happens in this movie through his discussions mainly with John Clement, the vicar. And John is another interesting character. What I didn't want was just a sort of one of these vicars or Christians that is just blindly believes that this is the way it is. God is real. I'm doing this job or this task in my life because I believe that's what I should do, and I don't want to hear any other argument. That I've got my faith and that is it. And faith is a great argument for people who believe, right? Because you can't prove it. But I have faith. That's all I need. Faith is more powerful. This is the nature of the universe. So it was interesting to have John Clement. I wanted him to be a scholar. I wanted him to be an academic, and I wanted him to have studied philosophy and theology. So he's not just a vicar. He's not just a vicar that has studied theology in the Bible, and that is the way he's living his life. He's lived the life as a student, lived with atheists, studied with atheists, and he even says that the majority of his fellow classmates studying theology were actually atheists. So he's had these debates about heaven and hell, mortal sin, and there's one line that I like that's in the script rather than the short story, and that is when John says, the theologist in me believes that I'm supposed to be a vicar. This is what I'm meant to do, and that's my faith. But the philosopher in me, doesn't care if I'm right or wrong as long as I'm happy. And I kind of like that, and I like that. John just isn't trying to convert people all the time. He's pretty laid back and relaxed when he first meets Peter. He's just interested in what Peter's uncovered, because he's had his own perceptions about Redway Lane and their own beliefs, which he sort of shares with the audience through the film or the reader in the short story. So I didn't want to just have sort of a dumb 30-year-old guy who happens to find these stones. He's got a history, and there's a reason why his faith is challenged, and equally his sort of sounding board for his faith, which is the vicar John Clement. I didn't want him to just be one of these sort of always smiling, popping around for tea vicars, although he is quite an eccentric character. I wanted him to be super smart, had challenged his own beliefs his whole life, and is very open to listening to other people's thoughts. And that's the device I use to explore this subplot of faith.